and
59th episode of Wayne's World and Kelly, and sometimes this happens. It happens a lot in our worlds, everybody out there, where you think you got everything locked down, everything's good to go. And I'll never tell you who the person was that was supposed to be here. Don't want to do it to her. Something must have obviously happened. But, shame on me for not triple checking. But how you doing, Wayne? You look good, buddy.
Yeah, hey, thanks a lot. Doing great. I know that, like you said, sometimes people's schedules get to the point where, they really don't know what's going on, and I get it. But would appreciate kind of a heads up if something is on the books and this person can't make it. It would be nice to let us know.
Now, I know a lot of people out there think that, I'm perfect. Okay, no one thinks that. My mom thought that. At least she made me believe that. But so since this happened, I'm going to give you a confession. So we started our company, LGC, LaGreca Consulting, owners reps for all the wonderful, beautiful buildings of South Florida when they're going to do a major renovation, restoration, or beautification project. So I think it was like maybe maybe first month rocking, right? And we maybe it was a couple months in. And I had something on my schedule where James LeGrec and I were going to meet some clients about 30 minutes from where I live. And it's on my calendar. It's on there electronically. It's on my handwritten calendar that I have down here. I didn't show up. I don't know. I've never do that. Never, right?
Wow.
So I'm doing my stuff, right? And I'm working from home. I'm probably wearing shorts and a t-shirt, and I get a phone call. Hey, buddy, what happened to you? I go, what are you talking about, James? He goes, you missed the appointment.
Oh boy.
I go, what are you talking about? We didn't have a dude, I am so embarrassed. Here's this guy who's just partnered up with me to start a new company. and I'm missing a meeting. Now he knows that's not me. He knows that I'm really good about showing up early. We have a little competition about who gets to the two meetings that we're both going to be at together the quickest. Sometimes my thing is try to be there 15 minutes early. So I usually schedule 30 minutes early because I live in South Florida.
Right.
And anything can happen. Competition of worst drivers in the world, bring it.
Yep.
And now, when these accidents seem to be worse than ever. So I don't think I've done it again. But it happens. Sometimes people double book, things are happening, emergency happens. I get it. I've done it. But now people are stuck with us. And I hate to we have a lot of people lined up to come on the show. And there's a lot of juggling to get the schedules to work out properly. Matter of fact, we might as well discuss it now. Our little friend, the Dutch oven wants to come back on the show, and we want him back on the show because he's very entertaining and inspiring. But he has physical therapy every morning, and Wednesdays at when we record at 9 a.m. So. You and I need to discuss adjusting for him. I don't want to get on a practice of doing that, but considering, it's impossible for him to do it at that time, I think we can. But, because we're pretty hard fast on when we record, and I drop it, usually within 90 minutes of recording. So, but if you can work it into your schedule, I would like us three to come to a meeting of the minds on that one.
Yeah, definitely. People's circumstances change and we can certainly accommodate. I know next week I'm going to be in my Chicago market, so I'll be doing it out of a hotel room. But it's always going to be great to be back into that market. A little bit different culture and change of weather than there is right here in beautiful Florida, flip-flop nation.
I listened to WMAL in Washington, D.C. Chris Plant for a little shout out to Chris. Chris is a very thoughtful, entertaining radio host who actually used to work with I guess with CNN or one of those guys, and he was a Pentagon
Whoops.
a Pentagon reporter.
Yes, he really did say that. He really did.
I can't believe I don't know whatever confused that, but at the Pentagon, and he's been on Air Force One several. I mean, the guy's really interesting. But so I listen to them in the morning. It's my only thing when I'm in the car or if I'm at home and I'm working. I'll have that in the background, and it's always I like to hear his insight on the world. But I also listen to their weather reports, right? And it's supposed to be like I think they said in the upper 40s this morning, and then it was going to get 80 later in the week, but upper 40s, holy smokes, I don't know what I'd do.
I got to ask you a question. So when you moved here, I kind of call it's like a reality distortion field where, a couple weeks ago when 9/11 happened, when I was seeing a lot of like memes and stuff on LinkedIn, remember 9/11 and everything, I was thinking 9/11, how come these are starting to come up right now? To me, Florida is like endless summer. I actually thought in my mind, it's like, well, wait a minute, it's like June or July, and it's like September, dude. Did you have that when you moved here? Like you have no concept of time.
Right. We weren't going to do this, but well, I'm going to answer that question, and I want to come back to 9/11 because I've got some couple different things I want to mention about that. So at 100%, I am so messed up on sports. And that's where I'm messed up.
Okay.
Christmas is weird. It's not, I mean, not weird. It's my second favorite holiday behind Easter. Easter, the great, resurrection is to me is like number one in history of my favorite thing that ever happened on this planet. But with sports, I can't, it's weird to be on the beach and then come home. And I did it last Sunday. Went to church, come home. It's nice out, throw on the bathing suit. I'm like, do I want to walk a block to the beach? No, I'm just going to go to the pool. I'm at the pool, and then 30 minutes later, a cloud just inches up above us and just starts unloading. Back in the house. Now, what am I going to do? I'm an outdoor person. I don't like being indoors.
No, I don't either.
So I'm watching a football game with the air conditioner running, and it's not preseason.
Right.
It's just weird. That and I was watching Kansas City, and they're not really grooving right now. I mean, they're, I guess they're 1-1, but it was, and it's so to me, the sports are the hardest part. Going to a hockey game, I used to go watch the Caps play. When you're all bundled up and you go, and you're still bundled up. There, you walk in shorts and a t-shirt, carrying a jacket because it's cold inside the arena. But I just can't. It's weird. And and we have an indoor baseball, field. I don't go for that either. So I'm having trouble really. I mean, baseball is what I love. So yeah, but it's definitely, and it does 5 years. It's not getting any better. Now it's funny. People that have been here for a long, long time doesn't affect them because, like you said, it's normal to them. To you and I, without having the 4 seasons. It's just weird. Speaking of the 4 seasons, that's where they're doing an event for Castle Group today. So I was there last night at the 4 Seasons. And the first time I went there 5 years ago, I walked in, I said, I'd like to speak to the general manager for false advertising. Get it?
No.
4 seasons. There's only 1 season here. Summer.
Got it. Okay. But with that,
y'all got to change. Y'all got to change the name to 1 Season.
Now the 9/11 stories.
He thought it was funnier. So 9/11 are a couple things. And then I'll give you a chance. But so I've been living at this condo, which is only 18 units, right, for 4 years. Unit 2, which is right around for me, and it's 1 and 2 levels, 4 small buildings right next to the beach. I call it the bungalow, and it's very cool. Unit 2 was one of the guys that was participated in 9/11.
In
And they
what way?
said yeah, he was, I was there 19 of them, I think total. And he was one of the pilots that took over one of the planes. I think it was one of the New York ones, but I mean, what are the odds? I mean, and he'd lived here for over a year. Everyone said he was super nice guy, very friendly, would do anything for anybody. And the guy was this mass murderer in the making. And then 2 blocks up, we had two other of them were here. And they were, I think they might have been right over here at Pompano Beach Regional Airport getting their training. But, devastating to know that.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
you just don't know. And I'm good friends with people that were here, way back then. And one of the couples that are just wonderful here, he's a pilot. And so he was interrogated. He and his wife were interrogated aggressively right after, I think it was maybe even the same day that they were figuring everything out who these people were. And they wanted to know if this guy, who I won't mention his name because I want to mention that light, was had anything to do with the guy. And he just said, hey, he was a nice renter, and
Wow.
was really good to everybody. So that was kind of devastating to learn that, but 9/11 was tough. You talk a little bit, because I have two friends that died that day. I'd like to mention that.
Well, I mean, it's two things come to mind. I mean, my wife and I were engaged a week and a half after 9/11. I remember flying into LaGuardia, and you could still see the smoke coming up from the site.
Right.
And another kind of weird thing is a girl that I went to high school with. She was a flight attendant for Northwest Airlines, which was a big airline prior to Delta purchasing them. In the corporate was in Minneapolis, Minnesota. She worked for the flight instruction school in a suburb of Minnesota, or in Minneapolis, and one of the hijackers was there. I think it was Zacharias Massari. She blew the whistle on him taking the class about not wanting to, how do you land the plane? How do you take off? Just fly it in the air. And she contacted the local FBI office. Subsequently, a warrant to search the computer was requested, and it was turned down. Now, you think about history can change on a hinge right there.
Right.
All of a sudden they're going to find everything in his laptop, but they denied the request. One thing like that.
Right.
That's how history can change on a hinge, literally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I find a lot of this stuff really fascinating all these years later, and it doesn't seem like it happened that long ago. I can remember everything when my wife and I were there.
It seems to me, like you said, it's like yesterday. So I worked with Charles Burlingame II back in the late 80s and became friends with his son, Chuck Burlingame III. His nickname was Chick. And super nice guy. He was an American Airlines captain. He had flown in the military during Desert Storm. Chuck was a great guy. This guy was just a neat guy. He'd retired from the Air Force, retired from I think it was, he retired from another company, and then he was working with us. Just he didn't have to, wanted to. He had 4 kids. His son was an airline pilot who also had a computer company on the side doing computer consulting. He had a son that was a brain surgeon in Pennsylvania. He had a daughter that was an attorney in New York. And then he had a son that was involved with community management out in California, was an actor, and ended up starting a computer company. I used to say, well, you and your wife must have been the most worst parents on the planet to have these 4 worthless kids. I used to tease him, but it was inspiring for a guy in his 20s to work with this older man that had raised 4 just amazing human beings. And Chick was one of them, and Chick lived locally. He was flying out of Dulles Airport. And I remember when Chuck had retired, but Chick would still come in by and see me every once in a while, and we'd hang out a little bit. And we just, you know, we had a nice, you know, outline friendship, but it wasn't like, you know, we were hanging out every day together. But when his dad died, you know, he called me, you know, so I'd come to the funeral as well. And that was a devastating day. I remember the day that he was buying a boat, and we were talking about that, all these different things. And he was just a really good guy. You know, you always see how great they were. This guy was like 6'2", you know, 8% body fat, smart as a whip, and just nice. And then to find out on 9/11 that he was flying the plane that hit the Pentagon, you know, it was just, you know, and they, you know, locked the door. That was the big change. I think taking our shoes off and our belts was ridiculous. Protecting the cabin was the right move. And then they did all this other stuff that still impacts us. Second of all, so I had a client that was Bob Email. When I first met Bob, I go, wow, you should have patented your name, Email. He didn't spell it email, but he wasn't going to tell me. He should have. So I went on with that for a while, and finally goes, let me tell you how I spell my last name. I'm like, that's still a cool last name. Yeah. And this guy was in Vietnam, was shot down, was a prisoner of war, was released, did his 20 years, retired, went civilian at the Pentagon, and then was killed that day. And once again, just one of these guys that was just unbelievably nice and just a good human being, and to give so much to his country and then to have something like that happen. So those, you know, those were impactful. My now ex-wife, the mother of my daughter, makes sense. My daughter and her my ex was working for Oracle Corporation, and they were at Disney World at an event. And so she took her mother to watch Maddie. And, you know, while I was still working back up in Northern Virginia, they went down. So that they hit the New York twice, and then they hit the Pentagon. And then I'm talking to her, and Disney was one of the places they thought was going to get hit. And so I got in the car and drove down to pick them up and bring them back. And it was just surreal driving. I've driven to Florida a lot.
Okay.
And knowing, I didn't know it was going to be my final destination, but I always wanted to be. But that day, there's hardly any, 95, you see the planes going, they follow that track, going north to south. And you don't see any planes. At one point, later in the day, I saw two, fighter jets flying over, I think like when I was in South Carolina or Georgia. And that was the only planes I saw all day because, they'd grounded them all. And then I got there at like 2 a.m. And I remember I got it back up at like 6, and I wanted to leave and head back home. Nobody knew what they wanted to do. It was just weird. It would have, there was no rush. What was I coming back to? I mean, everything was pretty quiet for a couple of days, but we just wanted to get back to our house.
Yeah.
And, it was just, and I remember this is just completely off the wall. It's me. We were stopping for gas. Maddie's at the time was 5. Yeah, she's 5-year-old. She doesn't understand what's going on. Nor did we really want her to know what's going on.
Right.
It was so tragic, and we were still processing it ourselves. But I remember like the last hour and a half of driving, probably an hour, she and I switched like 5 times because we were both so exhausted. And we drive, 15 minutes and then pull over and go, you got to drive. And we just wanted to get home. And then we found out guy 2 doors down, he was stuck over in Europe. He's a pilot and he couldn't get back for several days. And then my cousin married a pilot and he was stuck in Europe. It was just a weird impact. But being from Northern Virginia, losing, and I also had another client that I knew the guy for a couple hours that it turned out had passed away, but I really had no relationship with him like the other two. New Yorkers and people from DC, had the most impact. Shanksville, PA, where it's really close to where Maddie used to go to camp every year. But it wasn't quite the same effect. It was terrible. And I did you see the movie about that flight?
Oh yeah, I
Flight 77?
think it was Flight 93, wasn't it?
Was that one 93? Yeah, yeah, I think
Yeah,
you're right. You're right. You're right. But that was I remember I went by myself.
that's funny. So did I, dude. I did the same thing.
It hurts. I mean, you know what's going to happen, and it was
I
just
know.
excruciating. Just, and it's something that everybody needs to see and be reminded of and understand. It's but it changed our lives forever. And Maddie at 5, she's now 27. I don't think her generation and younger have really any concept of what that day was like. Sort of like I never could relate to Pearl Harbor. My dad was working for the Department of War back then, and he enlisted immediately into the Navy and was sent over to Hawaii.
Right.
So, it's and they would talk about it, and you've seen the movies, but it's nothing like living that day.
I know.
And it was weird. Remember how everybody put American flags on their cars or on their back window, and people were polite, and I didn't hear a horn honk for a month.
Yeah.
And then everybody, and then it was over. Good old Americans, we just forget how blessed we are and just go back to being the jerks that they are on the road.
Yeah. Well, I don't think that ever left in Florida. the most dangerous state in the country to drive in.
I know when I left, it was weird. We went to breakfast on the 12th at the insistence of my mother-in-law. She's watching. Sorry. I didn't want to eat. We know how to function. It was just such a horrid day. This before I knew who had passed away too. This was just, I knew fellow Americans had died and that we'd been attacked. And she wanted to go to breakfast. So we go into breakfast, and it was all you could hear was the clanking of the utensils against the plates. Yeah. But no one's talking. Everyone's just like deer in the headlamps. Yeah. And it's terrible. So
anyway,
I'm surprised Chicago at Target.
No, not that I'm aware of.
I mean, it's the second biggest. Isn't it the second biggest city in the country?
Third
behind LA.
Yep. New York, LA, Chicago. Yeah. Okay. I do have to give, I told my son I'd give him a shout out today. We got a really loyal listener with him because he is such a fitness fanatic. He really loved the episode we had last week with Ken. So, as a little bit of a message to the person that didn't show up today, you are missed because you do have information that you do need to share with all of us. You never know who you're going to make an impact with, similar to what Ken did with my son, Jake. So anyway, person that didn't come on the show today, you missed your opportunity.
I had several notes from friends back home that said that was really cool.
So it was a great episode. It was really great. And the thing that my son liked the most about it was his journey, right? I mean, that's what it's all about. I mean, he's old enough to know that the end game that you are going to achieve, it's that journey. Because if we all got what we wanted, then there would be no struggle. There would be no sharpening of the sword. There'd be no character development. It's the journey, and Ken outlined it very well. So
anyway. He sugarcoated it because, this guy.
No, I'm sure he grinded
it out.
Of course he did. Yeah, I mean, I could tell that. I mean, it has to be, even for a couple of yahoos like us. I mean, the show does have to have some kind of protocol to follow. Right. But if us three were sitting in the bar, I think the conversation would have went a little more of a different angle. But nonetheless, the message was well received. So
but his humility is real.
Yeah,
I
believe
genuinely one of the nicest people I've ever been blessed to call a friend. And he's just, and he hasn't changed.
No, he's got a great story. Yeah.
Yeah. And to me, that's the best part of him. Also, hear him sing. Last summer, I'm up, like I mentioned during the show, up back home, and he was performing. It was like 1,000, 1,200 people. And he just gets up there with his group and a bunch of successful professional guys that also are musicians. that are very successful in their own right. And they just get up there and it's like you're it's like the world's biggest living room. And Ken just gets out there and just, man, he's got a voice of an angel. I mean, it's a little deeper than I would assume an actor would be. But no, it's amazing. The guy, talk about a guy who has a massive influence on so many people. And, so many people call him friend. And it's just genuine. I mean, and it's fun, but boy, that guy, man, he can sing. That guy's got more talent on so many levels than I could ever imagine to have. And I just like to feed off him,
Well, yeah, that's what happens when you show up.
Yeah. Oh, go easy. Jeez.
And
his wife is also equal. I'm thinking about, I'm like, I should have asked both of them to be on, but she might've been distracting because he's ugly as heck, but boy, she's gorgeous.
Yeah.
He's a good looking guy too, which makes it even worse. It's like, geez, come on, pal. Can you have a flaw?
Right.
His hair has.
All right, my brother.
Yeah. So, hey, this is, I'm stuff happens, but for all the people out there that are down in South Florida, hope to see you over at the Four Seasons. They have discount valet parking because it ain't cheap parking there. I'll tell you that. But it's going to be a great event. They got 50 plus vendors there. Some great classes, blah, blah, blah. I think anybody can come in. I don't know. I could be wrong, but I don't think Castle would be upset if anybody that was either a board member or a property manager from anywhere in South Florida. I assume they'd be welcome.
Well, you give our mutual friend Millie Ventura a shout out. I know she invited me to one of their expos a couple months ago, and I was unable to make it because I had a conflict with the same date in Chicago. Tell her that I said hello and that we'll have an invite for her to come on the show. I'd like to host her. Okay.
Yeah, Millie and Kelly Britton do a great job. There's a lot of other people that we don't have time to mention out there in the great world of property management, but yeah, they're two shining stars. So.
All right. Tell her I said hi, and tell her I'll be messaging her for a time that's convenient for her. Okay.
Oh, sure. Take my Millie. It's okay.
All right, my brother.
See you, brother. Have a good rest of the week.
Yeah, you too. See you, buddy. Bye.